Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to Steam Flow. Today we're testing Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater on the Steam Deck. This is a full remake of the classic MGS3 rebuilt in Unreal Engine 5. It keeps the same Cold War era story and iconic characters, but updates everything with modern graphics, new animations, quality of life features, a new way to control the camera, and a lot more. And I want to answer two questions. Does it run on the Steam Deck? And if it does, is it actually worth playing it on the Steam Deck? Without further ado, let me jump straight into performance. Now, performance on the Steam Deck is pretty rough, but it's still playable if you're willing to make some great compromises. Now, at the lowest settings at 720p resolution and either TSR or FSR set to performance, the game runs in the 30 to 35 FPS range most of the time. Now, if you cap it at 30, you get a fairly stable experience. And honestly, that's the most realistic target for playing this game and finishing it on the Steam Deck. Now, you can try and push it towards 60 using lossless scaling, and technically it does work. But of course, with lossless scaling, there's always a big trade-off. The image warps heavily around the edges of the screen and the environment. You can specifically see some trees spasm out when you use lossless scaling, especially during camera movement. However, the input lag is surprisingly low, almost non-existent. So it still feels playable, but visually it is very distracting. I would say that whether you use lossless scaling or not with this game is up to your own preference. For me, at 30 FPS without lossless scaling is probably the better option. Now for the upscalers, I tested both TSR and FSR. These are the only options available on the Steam Deck, and I think TSR is actually the clear winner. With TSR, you will notice a little blur or ghosting around Snake when he moves, but with FSR, the same ghosting actually looks like noise, and it doesn't apply only to the character, but it also applies to the environment. And the result is much harsher, especially when you're moving. You can notice it almost all the time. So TSR just ends up being easier on the eyes. It still doesn't look great, but I think it's the better option. Now, if you set either one to balanced, you get a big bump in image clarity. The game definitely looks a lot nicer in that way, but the performance will tank. It will drop below 30 FPS, more in the range of 25 to 30. And for a game like this, which isn't fast-paced, even in combat, I think 30 FPS feels fine, but you can definitely notice when it drops below 30. Now, the main killer setting here is global illumination. This is what makes the game look much better, but it's also what will tank your FPS. So unfortunately, we can't even put that on medium. You will immediately notice a difference. If you try to put it on medium, the game will look a lot better, but it will run at below 25 FPS. During daytime, the difference with this on and off is a lot bigger than during nighttime, but you don't really have that many nighttime missions. If you want smoother gameplay, unfortunately, you have to keep this on the lowest setting. Now, I also tried out a performance mode from Nexus Modes. That mode swaps in an optimized engine.ini file. It promises better FPS without losing visual quality. And while it did give me a small bump, maybe 1 to 2 frames in certain areas, the difference wasn't game-changing. Don't expect miracles, but if you're squeezing for every last bit of performance, it doesn't hurt to try it out. I'll link for it in the description. I also tried running the game at 1152 by 720p and turning on the Steam Deck's internal FSR with sharpening set to 3, and I'm not sure if that even gave me 1 FPS difference, but in terms of visual quality, at least it's not suffering that much. So you can try and do all of these things to tweak to get it to stay at 30 FPS stable, or you can just set everything to the lowest, TSR to performance, and you will mostly get 30 FPS with some occasional dips to 28 or 29. Now, in terms of battery life on the OLED deck, it's actually surprisingly good. If you cap it to 30 FPS, it will be around 3 hours. Now, keep in mind the game has a lot of cinematics and a lot of downtime where you don't really play the game per se. You're either watching a cinematic or you're talking on the radio. Maybe that's why the battery life is so good. If you leave the FPS uncapped, the battery life will be around 2 hours and 30 minutes instead. And I think that's still pretty good for an Unreal Engine 5 title. Now, on to controls and features. The game has full controller support. It works perfectly with no adjustments. The game also includes HDR and visual filters. I tried with HDR and unfortunately it kind of runs a little bit worse. In terms of actually scaling, reading text on the screen, codec host menus and subscreens, I think they're all very clean and readable on the handheld screen, so no issues there. So to answer the question, can you play Metal Gear Solid Delta on the Steam Deck? I think, yeah, absolutely. It will run at 30 FPS. This is actually one of the better running Unreal Engine 5 titles that's come out this year. However, because this is a Kojima cinematic experience, I don't think the Steam Deck is the best way to enjoy it. If Steam Deck is your only option, it's totally serviceable. But if you want to see the remake at its best, I recommend either streaming it from a high-end PC to the deck or trying something like GeForce Now. I'm not sure if it's available there, but it probably will be at some point, or just playing it on a more powerful hardware. And unfortunately, that's why I can't really recommend it on the Steam Deck. Now, if you want to pick up Metal Gear Solid Delta at a discount and support the channel, you can do so on Instant Gaming. I'll have a link for it in the description. This is going to be an affiliate link, so I get a small commission if you purchase it there, and you can try to find the game at a discount. If you found this video helpful, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Also, don't forget to check out my Steam Curator page, where I post quick reviews, recommended settings, and verdicts for tons of deck-tested games. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.